What's up, everybody? My name is David Caldwell. I'm here with Krista Britton, and today we're going to talk about the Portland real estate market. And we're just going to do a little overview of our experience working with home buyers and home sellers in the Portland metro area in 2021. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about what we think we might be able to expect going into 2022. But this is really just like a how's the Portland real estate market conversation. So where should we start? Maybe we start with average sales price.
I think that's a fan favorite.
Yeah, I think that's what people usually want to know. Mm-hmm. So, hey, when we look at the Portland metro area in 2021, we saw the average sales price increase by 15.8%. We ended 2020 at roughly $494,000, and we increased to $571,900. I like the eyes. I like the eye roll.
Math.
Look, a big increase, almost 16% increase.
Yeah.
Largest single year increase, I believe, since 1992. So why don't we talk about how our clients experience that from a buyer and seller standpoint?
From a buyer and seller standpoint?
Yeah. So maybe like, I was talking to a seller who thought about selling last year, decided not to sell, is going to be moving to the Dallas, Texas area, or thinking about moving to Dallas, Texas. Maybe he's going to stay in Grants Pass in Oregon. It's like, well, good thing I didn't move last year because the market went up so much, right? On average, it went up 16%. Now, from a home seller standpoint, he is happy he waited. But from doing business coaching with realtors, the Dallas market went up almost 30%.
Ooh.
So hey, I held on to an asset and it went up by X percent here, but where I'm going actually went up more. So yeah. Interesting as a seller thinking about 2022, hey, if I hold on to wait to sell my house until maybe the end of the second quarter or third quarter, I think a big question to ask is, well, where are you going to go? Right?
Yeah, what's your plan?
Yeah, like I sell in Tigard a lot, right? I live in Tigard. I grew up in Tigard. There's a big difference between the market, let's say between $500,000 and $700,000 for a home and $1 million and up, right?
Right.
The appreciation just isn't like this for everybody, right? And every price point. Sellers, that's something they have to think about. Now, how about like with buyers writing offers, right? Because the competitiveness of the market is what drove appreciation.
Yeah. So
when you were working with buyers this year, how many situations did you have where you weren't in a multiple offer situation?
One, maybe one. And that was lucky.
Okay. I had a few more that weren't actually. I don't know what the number is, but like I had a handful that were not multiple offer situations. On Friday, I'm going to close on a transaction at the end of the year. I put in escrow that actually I think we're like 5 or 6% below the list price on. So we're actually able to negotiate. And representing sellers actually had a handful of sales where that buyer wasn't competing against anybody. But we have to recognize for buyer clients that, or for anyone looking to buy a house in these rapid appreciating markets, multiple offer situations are the main driver of that, right?
Yeah.
It's not always looking at the way an agent's pricing a house and pricing higher. In fact, in the Portland market last year, a lot of agents probably underpriced the house knowing that it would sell for more.
Yeah.
And knowing that in a marketplace like we're in today, a lot of the serious home buyers are conditioned to make a higher offer. So, hey, for anyone watching this, if you live in Beaverton, Tigard, Sherwood, Lake Oswego, wherever, there's a zip code or an area that you want to know what the 12-month rate of appreciation was, leave us a comment and we'll make sure to respond with what happened in that area in the last 12 months. So let's move on to listings. This is something we talk about a lot, but actually isn't talked about a lot in our community or in what you see in the news. And that is what happened with listings. So last year in 2021, we had 40,531 listings according to our MLS. All this data is from our local MLS in the Portland metro area. Now, the big thing we hear all the time is that there's no inventory. And a lot of agents were talking about months of inventory. And months of inventory right now, we're at our lowest point we've ever had. December was the lowest point we've ever had at 0.6 months of inventory. Months of inventory is basically how many homes are on the market and how fast they're selling. I look at months of inventory as more of a speedometer than it is a gas tank. Does that make sense to you, Krista?
Yes.
Like at 0.6 months of inventory, the market's moving really fast.
Yeah.
We're going 100 miles an hour. What it doesn't mean is that there's no homes to buy. And I think this is interesting when we look at the last 5 years of new listings, the market looks pretty normal. But one big difference that we have today versus the past years is, remember the days of like going out with a client on a Saturday or Sunday and looking at 10 houses?
Yep.
It's like a memory, right? Like we can't do that anymore. It might take 2 weeks or 3 weeks to see 10 houses. And that's a really different experience. But if maybe you've been fearful to buy a house because, people are reading their speedometer like they are a gas gauge, the reality is you have the same number of homes to look at. It's competitive, right? Your first offer probably won't get accepted. Instead of looking at 10 houses on a Saturday, we have to look at 10 houses over 2 to 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, the advantage is if you're a seller, it's a lot easier to sell your home that's maybe a little bit outdated.
Yeah. I would say for my buyers, it's forcing them to get ready to buy.
Yeah.
Like they actually have to be ready. They have to be pre-approved. They have to have done all the things.
Yeah. And I've always thought like there's this process of buying a home where you have to like see a house you really like sell. That happens faster, right? Like the buying process to me seems similar but different. Like the time period feels the same because people used to have to watch some houses disappear, and maybe that took a little bit longer before when days on market were higher. But look, I think if we go back to this, not very pretty slide that I made, the thing that's important to recognize about new listings is that they're pretty normal. And that's really important because if you think you don't have options in the marketplace, someone's telling you that, it's just not really the whole story. So if you've been looking for houses or you need us to send you houses, right? We could do that. Mm-hmm. That's something you just email us about. So we'd be happy to look at that. So let's move to pending sales. And I'll put our little pretty slide up here again. And this isn't going to take a long time to talk about. But I think the thing that's important to note when we look at pending sales is over a 5-year average. I just did this math. The 5-year average, if I had it up there, was 31,964. So sorry to confuse us with math again. But what does that really represent? It represents an 11% increase over a 5-year time period. When we look at pending sales between 2020 and 2021, it was almost an 8% increase. So it's interesting to think about this, because this is demand, right? 40,000 listings, 35,000 pendings. There's a gap. Greatest rate of appreciation ever in Portland. Multiple offers on everything because there's no homes to buy. Like narratives drive market. Like that's what this means to me. When I look at this, I think, why do we have such a crazy rate of appreciation? Well, that's what's going to happen when someone's screaming in your ear, there's no houses to buy. We don't sell real estate like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, we help people understand what's happening, and we can't change the narrative and the competitiveness of the market. But I believe cooler heads prevail, right? And our home buying philosophy has always been buy the right house when the right house becomes available to you. Does that mean that maybe you'll overpay for a property? Sure. Like maybe you will, maybe you love that house, but a bad deal today historically has been a good deal 6 months from now. I guess maybe we should define on how bad the deal is.
Yeah.
We don't know. Right. But I think what's really interesting to look at, like in 2021, we had this amazing year for pending sales, to say like really good year for the Portland housing market. A lot of that was driven by narrative, because when you look at the US Census data for last year, people moving to the state of Oregon, we saw about a 9,000 person increase. Not 9,000 households, 9,000-ish individuals, call it 10,000 individuals. About 3,000 home increase in pending sales. Not significant, right? So, for anyone watching this, I just think that's important to note, right? And if you're thinking about entering the market, this is stuff we've been talking about for 6 months, 7 months?
At least.
Scratching our heads like, what's going on, right? And we're hoping to scream it from the mountaintops this next year. So let's move to solds, because this is just really quick too, and then we'll just do a little recap, right? Hey, when you have 35,000 pending sales, you're gonna have 35,000 solds. We had the best year for closed listings. Great news if you're a seller. Will that continue going into this next year? We'll see. January, February is usually a filling out year. Look, at the end of the day, going into 2022, I wouldn't be surprised if pending sales and closed sales decrease a little bit, right? For certain cities, like Krista works in Sherwood a lot. I think Sherwood's going to be a big year. There's lots of new construction coming to the market.
Yes, which is much needed.
Yeah, we'll save that for another video. But, when you think about almost 16% appreciation in 2021, what's your sense of where values could end up going in 2022? And we won't hold you to it, because if you knew exactly, you wouldn't be talking to us. You'd be drinking margaritas in Hawaii. But what's your sense of the market? Where do you think it's going to go?
As of right now, it continues to me to be trending up. I don't know if it's going to continue at the same rate of appreciation. But with my buyers out there looking, and the offers that I still see coming in, right now, with the first few months kind of being a telltale of what's to come, I think it's going to continue on that upward trend at 16%. It's crazy to think we could have, top to top, back to back, but.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to see appreciation. I don't think there's a situation where we don't, right? And if we look at history, say it all the time, from 1992 to now, there's only been 4 years where the market's declined. It was all during the Great Recession, right? And if you think about inflation, buying housing is a hedge for inflation, all these reasons why homes are going to, or home value should increase, should continue to go up. I think next year will probably I'm hoping we're going to have this conversation. I'll be close to being right. And I think the average sales price in the Portland metro area will be around $625. I think we're going to have somewhere around, 7 to 10% appreciation, something like that. But for some reason, like the 625 number, when looking historically at data, like that just keeps, sticking out to me. I think with where conforming loan limits are going to go to, it's me. Right. You can afford the monthly payment with 3% down, you could buy a $650,000 house, right? So it makes sense to me that we're going to see the average sales price somewhere in that low to mid $600,000. A lot of, economists, and there's lots of reports coming out saying, housing prices nationally will continue to rise, albeit at a slower pace. And there's this big question of how inflation is going to impact mortgage rates. And, hey, if I have a mortgage rate in the low twos, how inclined am I going to be to sell my house to buy something new in the mid threes? I don't think that impacts people as much as we talk about it impacting people. If you want a new house, you want a new house, right? And people will continue to make moves. I remember selling houses in the Great Recession, and people would literally cut a check, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to get out of the mortgage they were in to go buy another house.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people that will take the higher interest rate, but Portland, when we look at housing, the Portland metro area, because of the urban growth boundary, because we still have people moving to Oregon, you just generally see the price of housing go up. And there's all sorts of factors we won't get into, but we're not building as many houses as we used to. People are living longer, right? Like when I grew up in a house with 3 sisters and my mom and dad still live in that house. I own a house and a couple rental properties. My sister and her husband own a house. My sister and her husband own a house. My other sister and her husband live with his parents, but good for them. Fun. But look, like my one household family, like 4 houses, right? And we're not building enough houses to keep up with that trend with a lot of households in Portland right now. That's going to be something that keeps values on the uptick. Hey, I don't want 16% appreciation next year. I want it to be easier for people to get into homes.
Mm-hmm.
So what like closing thoughts would you have?
Closing costs?
No, closing thoughts. Sorry.
Closing thoughts. I was like, on what price? Home, like around 10K. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of exciting to see where this year is going to go. I'm already excited about the prospect of having a bunch of my people that have waited to list. I think a lot of people this wasn't like last year, just wasn't the right time for them to sell, and they waited. And I'm happy for them that they will be selling at a time where they will continue to appreciate, and they didn't miss out on this bubble that people keep talking about, because it really hasn't been a bubble.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not a bubble. Let's not call it a bubble, right? Yeah, like when real estate agents post a post that's like, this is what your price would be at this interest rate, and then here's what would happen if prices went down. Houses and at a higher interest rate, and the mortgage payment still goes up. It should say, this is what your house is worth, or a house worth now with a low interest rate. Here's the same house more expensive with a more expensive interest rate, because we don't really see values go down. There are people that get bad deals that sell for a loss, right?
Yeah. That
does happen, right? Like you can buy a shitty house and overpay for it. And you know what else you can do? You can way over improve your property. I think it's worth way more than the market actually bear, right? But when we look at averages, it's pretty hard to think of a scenario where home values go down where the economy doesn't completely collapse.
Right.
I think That's it. We're done, right? We're done. So, hey, if you want to get in touch with us, the best way is emailing us at hello@hillshirerealtygroup.com. If you have any questions about the Portland real estate market that you want, maybe an analytical viewpoint, not just someone's opinion, because I heard someone the other day say pending sales were up 50%. I wouldn't want that person representing me in the purchase of a home. Let us know. We'll talk about it.